Hi, hope you guys are doing well. So we're at our first project video. Finally, we will be making this vending machine. Now, this image does not belong to me. This artwork doesn't belong to me. The link to it is in the description below. It's in Pinterest. You can actually just take a screenshot or whatever to actually get an access to it, and this falls under fair use. So I will, so I can actually use this image as a reference. So now we'll actually move on to Blender. So the first thing I need to tell you is that we will be using or doing some techniques that you still haven't done. So basically they are going to be new stuff, but I won't go into depth with them. Basically you will just be using them to get an end result, or what we want in this case, the vending machine illustration. And so I will be obviously making in-depth videos about them later on. So let's get started. So the first thing you actually need to do is right click and click on create a new collection, and I'll just call this ref for my reference image, and then I'm going to go to Shift A, image, and then I'll go to click on reference. Okay, and I'll just navigate to where my reference image is. Before we continue, please consider subscribing. Only 9% of you are actually subscribed. My goal is to reach 2.5k subs by the end of this year, and drop a like and a comment while you're at it. I'll just navigate to where my reference image is and import it. Okay, so now as you can see, our reference image is tilted. We don't want that, so I'm just going to over here and change the rotation to 90, and on the X and Y and Z to 0 and 0. So now it's facing front. If I click on 1, so you can see that it is facing on the front view. Also, I don't want my reference image to be this opaque, so I'll just go into this tab and click over here and change opacity to 0.3. Also, I'll go to over here, and I'm going to click on over here this selectable restriction toggle. So when I do this, now I can select my reference, and it won't get in the way of my modeling process. So now I'll just click on my cube, and will tab into edit mode, Z into wireframe, and I'll just scale it to be as wide as the reference image, and then S and Z to just scale it on the Z axis, and to be tall as almost as tall as the reference image. Also, the reason I picked such a reference is because that it's sort of vague, so we can actually take some creative liberties. Also, it doesn't have to be low poly, or it doesn't have to be high poly, so there is actually no pressure. It just needs to look cute. So now I'll just go click on 3 to go into side view, and I'll just tab out of edit mode, click on N, and I'll just start fixing its depth on the y-axis. I actually want it to be around 2.25. That's about it. And then click on N again to close it. Want to front view, and I'll just go over here and click on Control A to apply the scale. Okay, as you can see, now the scale is back to normal. So there are a few parts this is divided into. As you can see that this is a cavity. Okay, so there needs to be a big squarish hole over here, then there needs to be a hole over here as well, and over here as well, whereas these parts are basically going to be extracted outside of this mesh. So I'll just we'll just make the shape of the basic shape, and then we'll start cutting our holes. So tab into edit mode, click on Control R, and just move it to about over here, because again we will be cutting in later on, and then click on Control R again to add in a loop cut over here. Then again click on Control R to add another loop cut over about here, and we will again need a loop cut about over here as well. Okay, and then click on Control R and add a loop cut on the upper side as well, and Control R to add a loop cut over here. So now our cavities over here, and over here, and this part is also over here. And because we're going to be beveling it later on, well actually we'll be beveling it right now, so we'll next to make a few adjustments. So I'll just select this part and then click on GG to move it about down over here. Then again shift select over here, shift and select, and because I'm in the wireframe mode, it's going to select the back sides as well. Okay, if you do this on object mode, it's only going to select the first part. So again I'll just go on GG and move it downwards. I'll again shift click and drag, select this, and then shift click and drag, select this, and then go again GG to move these two on the upper parts as well, and shift and drag and GG to move this on the side as well. Again GG to move it on the side. Do this for all of the edges. make sure that all of them are properly selected so that there isn't much of an issue. So after this, I'm just going to go into edge mode and select this edge, and then select this edge, point to front, and then click on Control and B, and as you can see that about over here, I'll just start scrolling my mouse wheel and I'll start adding loop cuts. Okay, as you can add whatever you like, basically whatever fits. I'll do it about here. I think that looks good, and then I'll do the same. You can do this in solid mode if you want to, but the wireframe mode is better. So again, I'll just go into bottom part and Control B and start dragging it, and this time I don't have to scroll the mouse wheel because by default it's already using the last value I used. So now as you can see that we have the basic shape of our vending machine. So now what's the next part? The next part is obviously cutting this cavity, and then this cavity, and then this cavity. Well, before that, as you can see that this edge is basically just on the basic side of it. So we'll just select this edge, the front one. Okay, and I'll just move it about a little bit on the side, G and X to move it a little bit on the side. The reason is because when we cut the hole in cavity, if this edge is close to it, there might be issues. So to avoid that, we'll do that, and we'll actually do the same thing, G and Z to G and Z, and move this one above as well, so that there is no room for error. Also, you can see that everything else is smooth out but this side. So after you're done doing certain operations, you can always go ahead and click on shade auto smooth, and you can do this multiple times, so there isn't any biggie. So the next step is cutting the cavity. So to cut the cavity, we will be obviously needing another object. So I'm going to click on Shift A, mesh, and then I'm going to add in a plane, and R and X and 90, and I'll select the plane. Oh, I accidentally added the plane, as you can see in the reference panel. So I actually had to come it back over here, and I'll just turn it off again. And in the plane, I'll just call it our cutter obj, and now I'm going to R, X, and 90 to have it in front view. And before I make the shape in the from the plane, I will go to tab into edit mode, and if I just go and hit Control R, I'll add into loop cuts, and then S and X them to scale them to a little bit of on the outside boundaries, because again, once you add in the and then S and then scale them, right now you can actually currently see that if I just hide my reference, you can see that this is how I added loop cuts to one over here, one over here, one over here, and one over here. Because when I add in a subdivision surface modifier, I'll just search and add in a subdivision surface modifier. Okay, as you can see that now it's looking like this. If I didn't have these two loop cuts, let me just show you. If I select all this and right click and dissolve edges, so you can see that right now it looks like this, because I didn't have any loop cuts, and the subsurface are affecting it like this. But if I go and Control Z and add back those loop cuts, the surface modifier is calculating based on these edge loops. The bevel modifier also works the same way, and the regular bevel function also works the same way. So I'll just G and X and move it to over here, and I'll just G and Z to move it about over here where it's supposed to be, and I'll just select it all and then scale it first. Okay, and then I'm not just going to go as S and Z, because this way these curves, okay, the distance between these vertices will also be scaled, so that will create problems and it won't retain this shape that I wanted to. So to do that, I'll just click over here and drag, and G and Z to move it above over here, and then select Shift drag, and then G and Z to move it about here. And I still feel like this is round enough, so maybe I'll just GG and move this on the side over here a little bit, and then GG and move it to the side a little bit so that this looks more curved. Or you can alternately use another level of subdivision to give it more of a smooth edge. Now you can apply the subsurface modifier. I'll just do that for now, and when I do that, you can see that there are multiple vertices and edges, and a lot of these might not actually be of use to us, but again they're not going to be final, so it doesn't exactly matter. So now I'll just tap to 3 to side view, and then G and Y to move it about over here, and then select tab into edit mode, select it all, and I want our hole to be at least I'll just turn on top snapping, and because I turned on snapping, now I can easily just move it about maybe over here. So just E and click on Y and start moving, and as you can see that we are moving in increments. So about over here is good enough for me. So carve the first hole, then tap to come out of edit mode, and it's actually good to have a backup. So I'll just click on my main body. I'll call this main, and I'll just right click, new collection, and in new collection I'll just click on our main and shift D to duplicate it, and I'll just main 0012 into collection 2 and collection 3, and call this collection 3 as backup. So just in case we accidentally mess this up or something like that, we still have our base shape. I'll just turn off the snapping for now. So I'll just click on the main body, go into modifiers, add modifier, and then into the generate tab I will call the boolean modifier and select the cutter object. Okay, so the cutter object selected, I want it in a difference, and maybe if for solver performance or overlapping geometry, I'll just go with float for now, and let's just go into wireframe mode to see what it's doing. I think it looks good. I think it looks good enough. Yeah. So now if I just click on apply, I'll turn off my cutter object, and as you can see that this is our boolean result. Oh, I forgot to turn off my backup. I'll just turn off my backup, and as you can see, this is our boolean result. It actually looks really clean. You can again shade auto smooth just in case, and yes, as you can see. So now we actually have this thing, but because our original object had so many subdivisions, okay, our original cutter object actually had quite a few subdivisions, so that subdivisions were also passed on to here. But again, like I said, this is sort of like an illustration, and the shading actually looks fine to me. Okay, this isn't for game ready purposes or anything like, but I'll just show you a little bit of a trick. As you can see, the lighting is still okay. Okay, you can't see any shading error. But if you were to have any issues, you basically need to have all of these vertices to joining over here. Okay, and all these extra vertices could actually disappear. Technically speaking, we will only be needing these side vertices for good modeling purposes, and these side corner vertices, but the central vertices are basically useless. So but again, since this is sort of an illustration sort of thing, we only want the final render. Okay, we don't care about the medium result, so to intermediate result. So we don't need to worry too much about topology, because the final render will look good. As we can see that the shading looks fine. So you can, if you want to, go ahead and select over here, and then start selecting all of these extra vertices and edges, and just right clicking and then clicking on dissolve edges, and as you can see, everything is still the same, the shape is still the same. So you can do that. I'll just get rid of these edges, the one that I feel like are unnecessary. Right click and dissolve edges. Let's go into front view, and as you can see, the curved shape is still fine. Nothing is actually being affected. If I actually get rid of these, they are basically useless vertices as of now. And dissolve edges. Okay. So now the next thing we need to do is go into face select mode. I'll click on C to actually have my circle select, and I'll just start click and select dragging to select out these vertices. These faces, sorry, not vertices. I'll select all of these faces. Okay, and if you accidentally, let's just say, select something that you didn't want to select, let's just say I accidentally selected this, I can always shift and click and then deselect it, and I can obviously mouse scroll wheel to increase or decrease my radius, and then I can right click to get rid of the circle selection part. So now that everything I want is selected, I'll just go 3 into side view, Z and wireframe to see, and then I'm going to click on E. Okay, and I'm just going to right click, and now it's deselected. So now I'll click on S to scale it. As you can see that it's actually scaling. I'll scale it about over here, as you can see now here, and then I'm going to click on E and Y to move it about over here, I guess, because usually there is machinery and stuff that actually helps with the cooling of the vending machine. So there's that, and I think this looks good. So you can directly repeat the same thing we did over here to create the let me just turn off this main body to create this cavity and this cavity. And remember, our cutter object, you're not going to just actually start scaling it on the z-axis or something like that, because if you do that, these corner edges will also be scaled and the shape will be deformed. And again, you can obviously use the same technique I showed you before, to shift and to click on Shift Alt and start selecting these edges and vertices that are unimportant, dissolve them, and or you can just create a new cutter object. After done dissolving them, you can actually move these to the bottom part and move these to scale the shape. Okay, but first you need to actually dissolve all these extra vertices, or you can just create a new cutter object. The shape will be similar in terms of depth, and you can use the boolean modifier again to cut in an object like this. So the next thing I will actually do is the legs. So in front view we can actually see that there are only 2 legs, but in reality vending machines actually have 4 legs. So I'll just add in another object. Also, if you deserve right now, as you can see that my cutter object is turned off, it's only hidden in the viewport. Okay, anything that where this eye object is turned off, it actually means it's only hidden in the viewport. But when you finally render the scene, if you have this one turned on, okay, right now currently it's turned on, so the cutter object will still be shown in the final render. So if I turn this off, so right and this is even on, the cutter object will not be shown in the final render. So you actually need to just have this one turned off for the render, and this one is just for viewport, and this one is just for when you just want to disable the selection. So currently I don't need the cutter object anymore, so I'll have these all turned off. And the backup, again, I'll turn this off because I don't want it in the render as well. The empty by default does not show up in render. Okay, the empty image or reference image will not be shown on the final render. But so now moving on, I'll just create the legs in this scene now. So I'll go into click on Shift A, mesh, and you can use a circle if you want to, or maybe a cube. I'll just go with a cube, and I'll just move it into my main collection, and I'll call it legs. It's good to name and organize your scene, because again you won't know what our object is, because if you actually do a slightly bigger project, you'll see that it will just filled with primitive shapes, names like circle, or maybe cube or stuff like that. So it will actually become a lot difficult for you to manage. Now in edit mode, while having our legs part selected, I'll just select this top faces in wireframe mode and then delete vertices. So now we only have this bottom part. So first I'll add the modifier, and I'll add in a subdivision surface modifier, and I'll just go with 2 for now. I think that's a good enough result. And now I will add another modifier, and this one is I guess new for anyone who's a newcomer, the mirror modifier. These 2 modifiers are again part of the backbone of modeling. So the mirror modifier can actually basically mirror anything that you do in x-axis onto y-axis, or anything that you do into the y-axis into the z-axis as well. But currently it's set to x, so it will only mirror the object in the x-axis. Right now you can see the effect. So I'll just tab into edit mode, select all by clicking on A key and then G and X to move it on the side. Okay, as you can see now that I'll just go into solid mode, you can see that I have 2 meshes that are basically identical. Anything I do on one side is, as you can see, happening on the other side as well. Again, this is something new for the newcomers, but for your for now I'll go 3 into front view and then tab into edit mode and select all, and then G and Y to move it about over here, and then I'll turn on Y as well. So now it's actually mirroring on both X and the Y axis. I'll just tab into it out of edit mode, G and Z to move it down over here, and Z and wireframe to go into wireframe so I can see my reference clearly. I'll just start scaling it. Okay, then G and Z to move it, G and Z X to move it on this side, and then again scale it. And as you can see, we are almost at our reference, and G and Z to move it downward. Maybe I'll just go into solid mode for now, or yes, I guess this is one of those instances where extreme mode is actually helpful. So now I can actually see it in my solid mode, and I'll just move it a little bit more downward, as you can see, to about over here. And then Z solid mode, and I'll turn off the extreme mode, and I'll just 3 into side view, then again G and Y to move it inside because the legs are over here, and then I'm going to shade, tab automatic mode and click on shade auto smooth. You can again increase the subdivision level to more, but I think 2 is good enough because there isn't much focus on the legs. And as you can see, we now easily created all 4 of the legs just like that. So the next thing I want to add is the these shelves. Now in the reference the shelves are just over here, but realistically, or maybe it won't work in 3D, so we'll just make the shelves as wide as these windows. So that's going to be easy. Again, I'll click on my collection, then click on Shift A, mesh and plane, and I'm just going to G and X to move it on this side, and G and Z to move it below. And I'll just make it so that maybe I'll select my reference again and make it a little bit more big, like 0.5, so I can see it better. And now I'll just again turn off the selection of the reference and click on plane again. I'll just rename it to shelves. Now why am I calling it shelves and not shelf? I think anyone who's seen my other videos knows what we're going to be doing with this. So I'll type into edit mode, and I'll just going to add selection, and I'll just move it a little bit behind, about over here, as you can see, a little bit about here. As for the back part, I think this is fine, but I'll just move it to about over here so that it's touching the sides. Also these 2 sides should be S and X to about over here, so that they're actually inside the main body. So now I'm just going to go into modifiers again, add modifier, and I'll just type in solidify. So this basically makes your any model or any mesh thick. So I'll just go with 0.03, and as you can see that now it's actually thick. If I turn this modifier off, you can see that it's just a simple line, and then it's going thickness. Now again we're going to add another modifier called array. You probably have seen this, and we actually wanted to in the z-axis, so I'll just type in 1, 2 in the z-axis, and then 0 on the x-axis. And how many shelves do you have? 1, 2, 3. So I'll just take the count to bit up, and I'll just start increasing this so that the distance between them is increases. So I'll just click and drag, and now we have our shelves. You can again go into the solidify modifier again and maybe increase the thickness to 0.04, but this is affecting the array modifier, as you can see. So if I had applied the array modifier first, maybe the result would have been slightly different, or maybe not. As you can see, this disappeared again. So I'll just have to adjust my array modifier now, because again the solidify modifier increases the thickness. So I'll just start moving this downward value to lower. So now they're actually back in their original place. Now the next thing I guess we'll start doing with these bottles and crates. So I'll just create in a new collection called crates, and I'll just do maybe this top one and maybe this one, because these 2 are slightly different, and these are basically simple ones. You can do them yourself. You can just simply create the cylinders and stuff like that. So these 2 will be basically your homework. This is just a cylinder with bevel on the top and bottom, and this is one with just a cup. But this one and this one are slightly different, so I'll just do those. But first add Shift A, mesh and cylinder, and you can go with a lower versus number if you want to, but again this is sort of illustration sort of thing, so I'm not actually too much keen on this. So I'll just shade out of mode, G and Z to move it on top, G and X to move it on the side, Z and wireframe, and I'll just scale it over here, and then G and Z to move it on this side. Okay, and I'll also control A and apply a scale so that this is normaled out. Now type into edit mode, and I'll just select the top vertices, and then G and Z to move it about over here, and then click on Control R and move it about over here. Okay, now and about over here, about the same place where the white part is. This will actually help us later on creating the material as well, but also it's helping us in the modeling process as well. So I'll just change that over here and move it to the bottom part, and then I'm going to click on Control and B to start building it. Again, it's your choice how much thickness you want, but I'll just leave it now. Select all, and then S, Shift and Z, and now I'll just scale it around to make it less thicker. And now I'll just start building it, because again if I had done this board, the result might not have looked that good. So about over here, and then I'll select this, click on Control and B, and do this to make the shape of the bottle, as you can see. Now we can actually have, while having this selected, click on Shift D and then G and Z to move it on the top because we're using this thing. And then I'll just click on scale it down by clicking on S, and I'll just S and Z to scale it up a bit. And then I'll just click on this bottom part and click on E and Z to make it like this. Again, this is sort of one of those vague illustration stuff, so again you have a sliver of freedom of liberty. So I'll just shade auto smooth again, and now we're done with this. So I'll just click over here, and then it's time to make this sort of candy. So Shift A, mesh. I'll just go with the cube for this one, Z wireframe, and I'll just move it to about where the candy is. So this one is going to be a little bit of tough reference because the candy is actually tilted and not straight. So a little trick you can do is now we're going to come back to our reference image, and I'll just select my empty and I'll start rotating my reference, okay, until until it feels like that the candy is straight. So I'll just keep it like this and then Shift D to duplicate my reference, okay, and I'll take the original reference and move it back to 0, and I'll turn off my original reference and just keep the tilted one for now. So we'll just move our reference to about here where it's centralized on the cube. So now I'll just click on my cube, and obviously I'm going to have to scale it on the x-axis, and I'll just scale it like this on the bottom axis, and I'll click on Ctrl R to add in a loop cut, and then S and X again to make it a little bit wider. No, but if we're going to side view, it actually looks really how should I put this thing? So I'll just go S and Y in 0 because it is tilted like this, so I don't want that, and I'll set this edge again and S, Y and 0 to flatten it, and then select it all and then start scaling it on the y-axis to about over here. I think this looks good enough for a candy bar. You can obviously go a little further. I'll just select these both of the faces and S and Y to make it sort of like in this shape, and I'll just add in the subsurface modifier. Again, this is sort of an illustrated sort of thing, so we don't need to add the wrinkles and stuff, and about over here. So and right now it's actually being circular because we don't want that. We'll just be adding loop cuts over here as well, called supporting loop cuts about over here, and then Control R to about over here. So now this looks like a lot of a better shape. Now we'll just use this candy bar to create the FG. Now let's create the wrapping ends of the candy. So I'll just select the cube, tab into edit mode, and I'll just select these upper faces and then Shift D to duplicate them, and then click on P to separate by selection. So now I have this cube, and then cube 1, this is the half of it, and I'll just rename the cube to candy M for candy main, and the cylinder over here is actually our bottle, so I'll just call it bottle for now. And this cube is the candy W for wrapper, I guess, and I'll just add modifier on the candy wrapper, and the it's going to be the mirror modifier, but it's going to be on the Z axis, and I'm just going to tab into edit mode and R and start rotating it like about over here, just like this, and maybe rotate a little bit more, and then G and Z to move it to the edge of this, and I'll take these corner edges or these ones and start scaling them. Let me just go to solid mode, and because you don't want this to be this long, because again the reference isn't that long, so I'll just select these G and Z to move it downward and then start scaling them to about over here, and maybe we select it all again and rotate it a bit again. And as you can see, now I'll just maybe select this, Shift and Alt, and select all of them and click on F, and as soon as I do that, you can see that the shape changed because we added a face. So I'm just going to click on Control R, add an edge loop about over here to make so that our clip thickness is still maintained, and I'll just shift and select this and click on Shade Auto Smooth, And now our candy looks ready, but we have to combine these. So before we combine these, we have to see that what modifiers are attached to them. So the candy W actually has a mirror modifier. If I move it above, it doesn't change anything at all, so I just apply mirror modifier because the subdivision surface modifier is actually the same in both of these. Okay, so I just click on the wrapper and then shift click on the body because I actually want the candy M to be the main body. So I'll click on Control J to combine them into a singular entity. So now we have our candy, and I'll just delete our empty this one, because this empty reference, because I really don't need this one, and we just building it using the other one now. So I'm not going to rotate this right now, and in the next part, basically currently you have the homework to create this this ice cream container and this can. Okay, and in the next part we will be discussing on how to create these buttons and screens, etc. Okay, because this video has become a lot longer, so your homework is to create this ice cream can and this can, and again these are slender and it will be very easy, and you also have to create these two cavities. Okay, just like I showed you how to create this one, this cavity. So in the next video we will be creating these buttons and screens, etc. We will also be adding materials and finishing the rendering of this project. So I'll see you in the next video, which will be uploaded tomorrow. Bye. If you found this video helpful, please leave a like, comment and subscribe to my channel and watch another one of my videos, as that's how the YouTube algorithm works. It's a small channel and it won't cost you anything. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next video.